Okay, we're ready to go. Thanks for joining today, August 11th. My name is Derek Major. I'm with Eligio CRM. Today we're doing a weekly sugared CRM demonstration. Every week we do a little bit different of demo, and just depending on what topic we decided to come up with during the week based on questions we're getting from customers and from others. So we're putting together different topics we can kind of cover for you. To start off, we'll just do a quick little introduction on ourselves, on who we are and what we do. As I mentioned, Eligio CRM, we're a consulting company specifically in the CRM space, based in North America. Our head office is in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, but we have staff all over North America that you can work with for your CRM needs. Some of the things that we do at Eligio, CRM consulting, business assessments, implementation, training, support. So really, we are your go-to when it comes to working with our systems and with the CRM systems and helping you implement those solutions successfully. Some of the stuff we do is not just in the CRM software space, but we get pretty creative when it comes to building out solutions for customers. As you can see in the screenshot here is a client of ours in Calgary, a casino that we've set up the kiosk systems for that ties back into their CRM system. So they can actually reward and track points and rewards for their patrons that are visiting that. A little bit about how we do things. A lot of you, if you're just starting to get into the CRM world, you're just trying to get an idea of how a CRM might impact your business, you're probably in the learn stage, which like most people are, especially when you're even trying to replace a system too. You're going through discovery, you're doing demonstrations, you're trying to figure out which products you want to go with. Other stages that we work with our customers in are the planning stages, where we'll help them determine what the best approach is for a CRM. Execution, the development side, customizing the solutions, doing all the testing for you, getting into the go live, training, making sure that the system goes in right and that your staff actually adopt it. So we'll work with you to actually go through all those steps. And finally, we're not just set up to get the system up and running, but we're there with you. We partner with you. We're there for the long run. So I'm just going to flip now over to our demonstration today. So the topic we're going to go over is more around customizing the CRM. So you can check out in previous weeks, we've talked a little bit about some of the things like reporting, and, day in the life of a salesperson. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through specifically around how you can customize a CRM for your business. So if we go, what we're going to do first is we're going to go with the administration side of Sugar and take a look. So you need to be an administrator to do what I'm going to do today. And we're going to go through the studio. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to add labels, add fields, and add layouts to the system. To do that's pretty easy. You go into admin, and you're going to look for the developer tools section of Sugar. So inside of here, you're going to have a number of different options you can work with. The studio, module builder, module loader if you have custom extensions you want to install. The area we're most concerned about is going to be in Studio. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. So once you're in Studio here, this is where there's a lot of things going on. On the left-hand side, you can see we have a number of different modules in here. Accounts, bugs, calls, we have all kinds of stuff going on. Basically, anything you see there, you can customize. So you have a few different options. You can either go through here. If you've been a Windows user, this is probably looks pretty familiar. You have a little tree hierarchy here. You can kind of work it through there. But if let's say you want to modify a contact layout and fields, maybe you can click on contacts here, which gives you more of a visual representation. Or you could go on the left-hand side and click on contacts, and this will give you a bit more of a breakdown from a more list view side. So it's more of a preference. Either or works. It all gets you to the same spot. So if you want now, let's go take a look at a couple of these options. I'm going to go through each of these and explain what they are. The first one's labels. Labels is where you can manage all of the language packs inside of Sugar CRM. So great example. Again, we deal with a lot of Canadian businesses being a Canadian-based company. So we use province instead of state. So one of the first things we typically do for Canadian companies is we go and we update the state. And we just change that to province across the board. So you can go through here and update all the labels for each of the different languages that exist inside of the system, or at least the ones that you're most concerned about. So I'm just going to click on, I was going to discard, you know I save changes anyhow. Proper way would have been to update all the province to, or states to province, but we didn't do that. That's okay. Our next option is under fields. So we can go to fields and take a look at fields. And fields is where all of the fields exist inside of our system. Think of this as building the database. So we are in here, we're trying to determine what information we want to capture. So if I want to go in here and let's say I want to capture the favorite color of our contact. So when we talk to John Doe, we ask John, what is your favorite color? So what we do, we click on add a field. And from here, we have a list of criteria we can develop for this particular data. The first question we need to answer is what kind of field are we going to create? And there are a number of fields in here. If you go through the help documentation in SugarCRM, you can find that at support.sugarcrm.com. You will find a detailed description of all of these items. There's everything from address. So address would include the multi-line, so address 1, address 2, checkboxes, currency, a date field. Maybe you want the date and the time in there. Decimal, if it's not quite currency and you just want to do a decimal or percentage points, you can do that. An encrypted field, which are great for passwords. Drop downs, float if you're doing more complex calculations. HTML. Now, why would you do HTML in here? Well, you could be setting it up so someone might want to put some rich text inside of the CRM, so that could be one option there too. We also use the HTML one sometimes to kind of clean up the layouts too, so you might want to have some different headers and different layouts. You could use that. An iframe would let you bring in additional information from external sources, so maybe you want to have Google News display inside of a frame on your page, or maybe something like a Google Map. You could do a number of different things with that. Images, integers, so like a number. Multiselect, if there's multiple options. A flex relate. You'll see this in some modules where you can create flex relate. What that means is on a given record, you can relate information from a different module back into your whichever record you're doing it on. So a great example of that is, let me just go open this. We'll open up an opportunity. You will commonly see this on meeting records. And if we go into, say, an opportunity, we'll go attach a meeting to it. Let's go look at this. We will see right here, here's a relate to. This is called a flex relate. You can pick different types of modules. So maybe it's not an opportunity related to, maybe you want to relate it to an account. So there's a couple different ways you can use flex relate. Of course, phone number, radio buttons. A relate field is where you're not giving them a flex relate, you're actually picking which module you're picking from. You can also do text areas, so if there's a lot more text, description boxes are a pretty common one for that. URL, if you want to link to an external source. One we commonly do on here is for the like SharePoint. If you have a SharePoint site, you want to link a URL into it. Dropbox is another one, or even Google Drive offers that. You can just drop the link in there too if you don't want to use any of the integrations that are available. And finally, the most common one is the text field, capture text field information. So obviously there's a lot of options. Now, the first thing that I said that we're going to do is we're going to track what color we want to capture. So what we want to do is go do that as a drop-down. Now, we could do it as a drop-down. We could do it as a text field. We could even use a multi-select. It all depends on the purpose of why you're capturing the information. So why would I do a text field? Well, I could do that if I'm not sure what colors that they want to capture. The only cons to that is that I might get a lot of variations. I might have people spell colors in different formats too. Maybe they put BLU instead of BLUE. It could be different formattings, different text or representations depending on country. Whereas if I do a multi-select or a drop-down, I can actually create a list of options that someone needs to pick from. Now, I think we've kind of ruled out text field as an option here. So maybe let's talk a little bit about multi-select versus drop-down. So if we do a drop-down, I can only pick one. So John Doe, what is your favorite color? Is it blue or red? Could it be blue or red? So it's a little bit more of what the purpose of what you're trying to do. So I can go on, create a drop-down, and they get to pick one. Or I could do multi-select, same idea, same list, and they can pick multiples. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to do a regular drop-down. So we're going to call this favorite color. And for our American guests, I did spell that in the Canadian version. in case you're wondering why there's U's in there. Drop-down list here. We'll just go and add a drop-down. Favorite color list is already populated, so let's say blue is one color. We'll add that in there. We'll add yellow. We'll add red. And let's add one more with green. What I'm also going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and click on add here, and this just adds a blank one in here. What that's going to do, it's going to let me make this a required field. So if I'm going to ask someone what their favorite color is, I can make that a required field, but that only works if you have a blank default. Otherwise, it's going to default to whichever selection we make on here, but I want it to be blank. One last thing I want to do is make it in a particular order. We're just going to put it ascending, just so that this all makes sense to someone if they're trying to use the keyboard. Some people, if there's a really large list, they might use the keyboard to quickly drop down to the list to, like, they might hit R and it'll bring them down to red automatically. So always try to make that ascending. It's just a better user experience. I'll just point out, I'm not going to go too in-depth on this, but if you're on the Enterprise Edition of SugarCRM, you'll also have the role option where you can configure role layouts and drop-downs specific by role of a user. There's more of that available, of course, on the documentation, but of course, let us know if you'd like us to answer a few questions on that too. So now, what's happened is you'll notice under my drop-down list, it's now related to the favorite color list. I have here default value. If I didn't put that blank in there, it would have always been blue. We want it to be blank. And like I said, we want to make it a required field. But again, that only works if it's blank, because if it was always defaulted to blue, it's always picked, so it wouldn't have made sense. So we're going to leave that blank. Next option is mass update. And what mass update means is that, do we want a user to be, if they have the capability to do a mass update, do we want to give them the permission to do so? So if we go look at the list view here, we made some changes here, so it's going to take 2 seconds here to reload. The next option down here is a dependent field. So we can actually do two things here. I can actually set up a parent dropdown. So I can say if the lead source equals blank or cold call, maybe if cold call, I only show blue and green. So you can actually create a cascading dropdown. A great example, and probably the easiest to describe this as, you might have a list of cars. And that might be General Motors, it might be Toyota, it might be Honda. And then once you pick on the first list, the Toyota, you might only see specific options of vehicle for that particular brand. So you can create cascading options of dropdowns. You can also do a formula. And a formula is just, you've probably seen it in Excel, it's just a calculation. So you could use variables on that particular contact record and any related information to come up with a different calculation. These work a lot better if you're doing it on a text field or integers. Maybe you're doing roll-up values. For instance, maybe you want to know that contact, what the total value of opportunities that have been closed won with that contact. You could do a calculation like that. Dropdowns doesn't work so great that way. Now, if we pop back, let's talk about that mass update. So you can go up here, and I can click on the little checkbox to highlight everything and click on mass update. That little checkbox tells us whether or not we want to include that new field as a mass update type of field that we could. So if I want to make type every single one of these guys a competitor, I could do that. So what we're saying is we enable the ability to set the different color, favorite color for mass people. Reportable. As far as reportable goes, this can be used for filters and for displaying in reports. So if you check that off, you're then able to use it inside of filtering and reporting capabilities. Audit, this means we're going to track every time it gets changed. So if you've ever gone into an account record, underneath here you'll find a change log underneath the edit button. I can see here that these are fields that have been enabled as audited. So the office phone number was an old value of nothing, and now it's a new value. So if we want to know when red went to blue, we can audit that field. Keep in mind this does take up additional data in your database, so that's something to keep in mind there too. Importable just means that it can actually be imported. And finally, on the enabled side, the duplicate merge, whether or not you want to make that as a criteria for duplicate checks, is another option there. Now, once we've gone through all of our options here, all we have to do is click on Save, and now we've gone ahead and told Sugar to create this field onto our contact record. Now, since we've done that, we scroll in here, we can have a look, and I can see there's favorite color, it's a drop down, along with all of our other fields, but we're not quite done yet, because if I go into contacts, and again, we're going to take a second to reload. Every time you make changes in the back end, it's going to take a second to reload the system. So if you have users logged in and you make changes during the day, you got to be careful with that because it could impact their workflow throughout the day. So let's take a look at Judy Mara here. Obviously, there's no favorite color on here yet, so we need to get favorite color on Judy's profile. To do that, what we need to do is go back to contacts, and we'll come back to relationships in a bit and explain some of these other items, but let's talk about layouts. This is where we go into layouts, and now we can go and edit the layouts. Let's talk about the 4 different layouts. There is record view, there's list view, there's a pop-up view, and there's a search view. Search is going to drive everything to do with your filters on your list view. The pop-up view is going to be used for, I'll just pull up here, for your pop-up searches and for your list view if you're trying to select a contact. So if I am looking to search for a contact on an account record, I would use that, the pop-up view to configure that. List view is the list view back here. If I click on contacts, this view up here, this lets me configure that. And like if I want to go down here and find our favorite color, right at the bottom, I can drag that over here now. We'll save and deploy that. And if I just go and refresh here, again, it'll take a couple seconds for it to load. We'll just let this come through here. And while it's loading, I'll come back to that in a second here. We'll go back to layouts now, but the layout we need to work with is the record view. So we're going to go into the record view. And this is identical to what you saw on Judy Mara's profile. And just popping back here, you can now see we have a favorite color column now showing up here. So if we go into Judy Mara's profile, like I said, we need to get that favorite color in here so that we can update it and actually see the information. So if we go back, on the left-hand side, I have a list of all of the fields that I can work with. So I can go in here and look for my favorite color, and it's right here. And I need to find a place to put it. So you're looking for fillers. I want to put, there's a filler there. I can even hit that little minus sign to create another filler. Maybe I didn't want to do that. You click on the X, or sort of the plus sign, it'll open it back up. But let's go ahead and add another row. So you can actually add another panel or add another row. So let's go and add a row. So we're going to go down here and we're going to grab favorite color, and I'm just going to drop that right in here. So from here, I'm just going to go save and deploy. So now, all we need to do is go back to Judy Mara, hit refresh. While that's loading again, I'm just going to pop back. And I just want to point out one thing here. Role, as I mentioned with fields, in the drop-down lists, you can customize drop-down lists by role. You can also do that by layout. So you might have a different layout based on the different type of person that is logged into the system. And this is, again, the feature of the Enterprise Edition of Sugar. Now, if we go back to Judy Mara, first thing you'll notice right here, we have our favorite color. So I can click on that little pencil, and there you go. There's all of our list items. I can click on green. I can click on save. I now have green as a favorite color for Judy. I can click on the contacts list, and now I should see Judy there with her favorite color of green. Now, if you recall, we went and did a mass update. We added, so we should have this favorite color in here now, which is right at the bottom. So we will make that red for everybody. We'll click update on the red, and now we should have all red updated for these records. So as you can see, you can really create a field quickly and easily and add it into your layouts and do all kinds of things like mass update. We won't go into that now, but you can also report on favorite color, like tell me everybody likes the favorite color of red. That's really easy to do as well. Now, just to pop back here to talk a little bit about layouts. So we already, we talked about the layouts, but I just want to talk about a couple other features. Relationships. This is where you can go and configure relationships. This is probably a whole webinar on its own, but this is when you, if you're ever wondering, if you go into, say, look at Victoria Rogers here and you scroll down, if you're ever wondering where all these sub-panels come from, we can create relationships, because what we said is that there's many calls that belong to this contact. And if you were to go back here, you can probably find it in here. We're going to look at the calls module right there, calls and contacts. Calls can be related to many contacts. So we have relationships defined in here. So you can do that, and to add more If you ever created a custom module, you could do that really easily in here as well. And there's two other areas, subpanels. You can go in here and customize what shows up on the subpanels. So again, if I go back to Victoria, we have calls as a subpanel. I can go and modify what shows up on the calls subpanel here. So I can see subject, status, start date, end date. I can pop back in here, subject, status, start, and it's all there, right? So if I wanted to go and add anything else in there, like maybe the direction, is it an inbound or outbound call, I can go and hit save and deploy, and that will subsequently update this subpanel on here as well. So really, you're going to use this to kind of tailor and customize how those subpanels work. So again, every time you make change, sometimes it has to think a little bit. And what it's doing, it's actually rebuilding all your preferences inside the system. So it only does that when you make changes. So like I said, when you make changes, make sure you do it on after hours when you're not impacting your staff. Otherwise, they will feel a bit of a performance as stuff's being updated all the time. Now finally, for those of you on mobile, you can go and actually modify what shows up on mobile too. So this is the, let's click back here, I'm jumping around. The mobile layouts. So in mobile, it's a little different. If you're a previous user of Sugar, if you used Sugar before, you will know that there used to be an edit view and a detail view for Sugar when modifying things. So this hasn't changed for mobile. If you were to go into edit view, here are all the fields that you can edit. If there's anything, if I want to drag my favorite color over there, I would have to go and create a role, and then I can go and drag favorite color into the mobile edition, and that'll show up. Mobile layouts also has the role management feature. I'm just going to discard changes here. And then detail views, what do you actually see? And then you have your typical list view as well, which shows up inside of the mobile app when you click on a person's name. So that's a quick little overview on the studio and adding a field in there. Of course, there's a lot more you can do in there, and we'd be happy to hear questions and all that on how to do that. But you can also reference our website, eligeo.com. That's eligeo.com for more tutorials, but also check out support.sugarcrm.com for documentation there. Or just simply email us, and we'd be happy to do a webinar specific on any of the questions and topics you have. So for Eligeo CRM, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in today, and hope you have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you next week.